our first podcast. I know both of you
Hello.
must be excited to talk about IT asset management, or ITAM as we call it.
Mhm.
Now, I hope this podcast goes out to the audience and they take something away from it in terms of enhancing their knowledge of ITAM and learning a few new concepts, maybe. So, why don't we get ourselves started first? So, Mickey, I'll come to you. Let's talk about what we do here at Asset Sense and what your role is.
Sure. Hey everyone. Good evening, good morning, and good night for everyone watching this podcast. My name is Miki Purnamasidi. My role at Asset Sense is the operation director. So I'm overseeing the operation of Asset Sense as a general, and we are a partner of ServiceNow. And our niche is IT asset management, and we are predominantly servicing Australia. And over to you, Kritika.
Hi everyone, this is Kritika Sharma. The nickname that I've been given as Sam Dictionary. So I've been into Sam industry for more than 13 years, and I work here at SNZ as a Sam lead. So all the implementations from start to end is done by me, and
Thanks,
That's
Kritika.
great. Thanks, Mickey and Kritika. So, Mickey, you are the resident ham expert as well at Asset Sense, and
Yes.
Kritika is, as she mentions, she is the resident SAM expert. So, great to have you both on the podcast, and I'm sure you will both enjoy it. So, starting off, when we mention IT asset management, I know this is quite an interesting topic amongst the technology folks. And Miki, I'll come to you first. So,
Mhm.
what have you been observing in the discussions in the technology landscape? So, what is it that the CTOs and the CIOs are focusing on, and what are their challenges when it comes to IT asset management?
All right. Good questions. And the way I see it at the moment is the challenge is always cost normalization or cost optimization, right?
Mhm.
And in order to do that, some of the challenge that we've seen is some of the CTO or CIO look at ServiceNow as a tool, but sometimes neglected the process behind that, for example. So they think that, okay, we implemented ServiceNow and everything will be sweet. But in actual fact, we probably just need to, do a lot of homework, or sometimes we as a consultant, we sat there and, okay, which match do we fix first? Because as soon as we join, we are expected to perform on day one, right? And then when we saw the instance, we went, okay, this is wrong, and the CMDB is not up to date, discovery schedule is not running, and that whole tangle of mess sometimes we have to fix before we even able to start the project. But of course, we can't really show that to the customer in a sense that, oh, your data is messy, your environment is messy. We somehow have to turn that around into a positive vibe, right? And then we can say, okay, we see there's an issue in this area, we can fix it, but it might not be as part of our deliverables. We can talk about maybe, additional work down the track or something like that. Or if we really can't move ahead with the proposed project plan, then we have to put a fix on it immediately before we move forward. That's typically what I've seen. So the bottom line is ServiceNow is seen as a silver bullet of the problem, but sometimes the organizations neglecting the underlying issue on the back of this implementation.
Right. So, what I'm hearing is the sort of two most important things that
Mm,
are front and center of the CIOs and the CTOs mind these days, as far as IT asset management is concerned, are cost and compliance.
yes.
The second aspect of it.
Mm.
So, Kritika, what has your observation been regarding? Mickey has talked about cost. So, what has your observation been regarding compliance and how IT asset management and SAM in particular can play a role there?
so I think it's not just a SAM, but for the overall item, I feel the biggest challenge is getting the right foundation data. So SAM is something that just cannot be delivered unless we have, accurate your normalize and reconcile data. So by this, I mean that when we are integrating different discovery tools, be it your SCCM, your Intune, or maybe ServiceNow Discovery, it becomes a tricky part. And then it comes the normalizing those software titles and the alignment of those installations with the entitlement. So I have seen organizations, they might not even aware of, what license metric it should be, if it is per user or user subscriptions. So I think that's the biggest challenge, getting the right foundation data. Second, I would say is the alignment, organizational alignment. So you will see that SAM is not something which is an independent module. It often sits between your procurement, your IT operations, your finances, and unless those teams have shared objectives, the program actually struggles to move beyond, compliance reporting.
Mm,
So the answer to your question is that what should be the expectations for CIOs? It should not be just limited to the compliance reporting, but they might be interested in looking into the outcome of that SAM implementation. That matters to them the most. So that outcome can be your tangible ROIs, in the way how we are reducing the true up cost, your
mm,
optimized renewals, and a better vendor negotiation power when they have knowledge what applications are being used. So Mickey has already mentioned about the cost. The From SAM perspective, I would say there's also they might want to see risk reduction and strategic visibility. So I tell all my customers, when their SAM practices mature enough, you can just tell your CIOs whenever they question them that what software they are using, what they own, and what can actually be reharvested. So yes, I think that should suffice your answer,
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant take on that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also, I would like to add what the CIOs actually need from IT to tell them, as far as IT asset management is concerned, is okay, what is the total cost for me as far as IT goes? So, what am I spending on hardware? What am I spending on
mm,
software combined? And that's the view that they're after. So then they can start charging back to the business units. Hey, this is your IT cost. This is your IT cost, and that's how they can run IT as a profit center instead of running it as a cost center.
Yeah.
Um, Perfect. Now, that brings me to the next sort of topic, which is okay, you have identified you need to embark on your IT asset management journey. You need to start. Now,
mm.
what are the prerequisites or the um, important aspects to get right before you even think about embarking on your ITAM implementation program? So before you start implementing your tool, your new processes, what is it that you should get right first? Such
Sure.
activities. So starting with you, Mickey.
Sure. I think the first question that the organization must ask themselves before they embarking in any ITM journey is what do we want to get out of this?
Um,
Like there could be key drivers. What I've seen in the past, maybe couple of years, they've been a drivers of getting compliances, for example. So we've seen a lot of financial organizations needing to do compliance on the CPS 230, I think. So getting all that sorted. So that those are the drivers. So what I've seen as well, organizations don't really do ITAM voluntarily because most of the things that I've seen so far are either they have to make a compliance or they've been told to do it. So out of maybe, I don't know, I would say 10 implementations, maybe one that's really feel that organization, oh yes, we need to do it. So coming back to the point, the intention. So what's the intention of it? If it's compliance, then we need to look at all those pillars supporting the compliance. So in ServiceNow, for example, we look at CMDB, for example,
mhm.
we look at discovery, and also the most important thing that they've sort of seen and miss is the foundation data. So the data about your people, location, and your sites and everything else. And I see that Mike's here, so Mike can probably share his insight as well if you want to come back to your question, Suma.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you here, Mike. The question that I was asking Mickey just before you joined is, uh, what are some of the prerequisites and some things that you want to get right at the outset before you even start thinking about embarking on your IT asset management journey? So Mickey has raised the point of getting the CMDB correct. So I would like to come to you for your take on this and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, Miffy's right there. That the pillar of success for any ITAM program is accurate data. You can't even sort of like consider embarking on an ITAM program unless you're confident that your data is accurate and that data is actually getting updated on a regular basis. So you've probably heard me say this, but software asset management is essentially dead on arrival if you haven't got your CMDB probably 90-95% accurate. And to actually get to that 95% accuracy is a lot of work, especially when we're talking from a ServiceNow point of view, and you're looking at infrastructure software like Microsoft, Oracle, Red Hat. So a lot of organizations have that data flowing into the platform. And also on top of that, I'll actually include public cloud installations, AWS, Azure, GCP, that they have some form of data flowing into the platform, but it's not rich enough for software asset management. And sort of like what we then need to do is embark on a series of conversations with the customer's security and platform teams to get the appropriate credentials, the permissions, so that we can actually get that data. And I'll give sort of two examples here. Firstly, is really within the public clouds, and most organizations know what virtual machine instances they have in the public cloud. But from a SAM point of view, we need to know a lot more. We need to sort of like know what's actually inside that virtual machine, not just the existence of an instance. So that means that we need to pull a full software inventory, and from that inventory, we need the same thing as we do for on-prem. We need versions and editions, and also as well that we need to understand how the license was obtained, and that may be existing licenses that were held when customers were more or less all on-prem. They can be reused in the cloud, or they can be pay as you go, which is part of the Azure or AWS subscription. And we need all of that data from a SAM point of view. So the other example I'd like to talk about is Oracle, because that's also that can also present difficulties, primarily because we actually need to get into the databases. We need to read information in the database, so we need to actually log in to those databases as a service, the service accounts as a non-human user, and grab data around registered users, installed options, installed management packs. And I think that it needs to read from around about 30 tables to get that information, and they're called applicative credentials. And sometimes it's very difficult to get the appropriate permissions from security to actually get into the databases. It requires presentations at design councils and security. So these are the sort of considerations. So when embarking on a SAM program, I think everyone will be have probably taken on board that these infrastructure software server-based use cases are going to take time because of all the approvals we need to actually get the data we need. So typically we tend to start a SAM program just on SaaS software, where discovery, inventory sources, they're not as important because there's different ways in which we get the usage data. In most use cases, there isn't a local install, so we don't need SCCM and Intune. So that's where we would start a SAM program. So we're doing that on one hand, and on the other hand, we're fixing up like legacy CMDB issues. the whole discovery data collection that I mentioned and that. So those are sort of like your two facets. But the other important thing that we need to document, and Mickey, I heard you mention this before, is thoroughly understanding how they're actually, how organisations are, how their how and SAM processes are currently working. More importantly, that a lot of organisations have had a go at creating forms and workflows for requesting hardware and software. Quite often they don't really align with what we actually need from a SAM program, and so we need to understand how they're doing things both technically and from a process point of view to actually understand what needs to change to get them into an optimal state where we can automate as much as possible. And a great example there would be integrations with Entra, integrations with AD. So we can automatically add users to AD groups, or we can automatically add users to Entra security membership groups. And that way, through those integrations, it's zero touch, user requests, manager approves, and the software's available. And other use cases we need to look at is things like automating license checks, creating tasks to add users to portals, because sometimes that's the way in which software is provided to customers. So what we're looking at are those life cycle processes that impacts license positions, and we can automate as much as possible. And more, I think it's becoming more important how we dish out licenses rather than compliance. So if we have some rules at the start of the process, which personas can use which licenses, then the license compliance from a SaaS point of view sort of takes care of itself. So those are sort of like the important sort of things. It's process, data, and the underlying technology, and all of these need to be agreed upon for effective ITAM programs. So I wouldn't actually even start a piece of SAM work unless there was some really urgent use cases before a set of processes have been agreed, before we know that the data in the CMDB is accurate, and then we can actually start thinking about SAM related things like license compliance, license optimization, and that type of thing. So I think I've provided a very long answer. Samantha probably was a very short question.
So thank you for that.
That was a very detailed answer, Mike. Thanks for that.
Yeah, all the points that I was thinking back in my mind have been covered by Mickey and Mike both. But to add to this, Suman, I think as Mike also mentioned, integration planning is very important. So I've seen that SAM is basically like a nervous system that connect all the modules, be it your HR, your finance and IT operations. So I've seen like procurement is important. I think it should be linked for your entitlement data, and user details plays an important role for your SAM implementation. So HR integration with SAM tool is important. Also, it might sound very basic, but the information regarding your company's locations, you have seen those fields, right? When we look at the compliance report, your cost centers and departments, I've seen most of the organizations, they keep it as blank, but I think they become crucial when you are attributing your ownership and you want to calculate your license consumption accurately. So that is something that can be said as a foundation data for a good SAM implementation.
I think that those are really, really good points. And something I'd like to touch upon is around license compliance. And everyone sort of immediately thinks, oh, well, that's what we need to show to vendors. That's what we get audited against. But more and more, what I'm seeing is that organizations want to start tracking internal compliance. Like what Kritika said, they want to know which departments, which divisions, which business units are consuming licenses. So one use case I've come across is that why is this division, which only makes up 30% of our organization, using 70% of our Microsoft software licenses? Now, that's not important to a publisher, for a vendor, but it's very, very important for internal compliance. And I'm seeing this like more and more, especially with SaaS use cases. Organizations want to control, who is actually using the licenses. And as Kritika says, foundation data like locations, organizational assignments and users is really important. And, so going back, we talked CMDB. I didn't talk about foundation data, but if we're looking at this from a ServiceNow point of view or any other software or any other SAM tool, we need to make sure that we don't have things like duplicate entries in the sys user table. We need to make sure that we're getting a full set of organizational assignments so we can do tracking by business units and organization can see where their software is licenses are distributed across an organization. That also becomes important for organizations that want to do chargeback by division, by business unit, by cost center. And again, from a SaaS perspective, those use cases are becoming more and more pervasive. There are organizations saying, well, how can I get a report for my marketing department? How can I get a report for my, if you're looking at departments, my logistics organization, my enterprise systems organization. So there's better control in that regard. So yeah, it's foundation data, which is common. So multiple processes is really important. Kritika's right. Users, locations, departments, really, really important. And that really needs to be fixed up so we can actually derive the reports that are needed for internal compliance.
And adding
Fantastic.
to that point adding to that point, sorry, Suman. Yeah, the foundation data is also critical when in ServiceNow, especially when we fulfill a request without a proper location, we won't know where we're going to deliver the hardware to. I've seen most companies having multiple sites, with the same name that they needed to clean up before embarking on the HAM project, and something small like that gets neglected, and in the end, it's just jeopardizing the overall outcome of the project.
Right. That brings me to my next question, and I would say, in speaking with most of the customers, this question is sort of the elephant in the room. So the question whether to do the implementation as a MVP or go all in at once using a big bang approach. So Mike, I know you have worked on so many implementations, and so many times you would have been in discussions with the customer around this particular topic. So I would come to you first and get your take on this.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a big believer in doing MVPs, and as I mentioned before, that doing an MVP around a SaaS use cases, and I always look at Microsoft and Adobe because those integrations are really easy to set up. And if we have all the entitlement data, we have the approvals to do the integrations, and you can turn an MVP around very quickly. And the reason that's important is that, stakeholders are always very interested in any program of work. They've bought a license, paid for the implementation effort. And by having this MVP that you can actually show these stakeholders outcomes, very early on in the project. So we're not waiting, like I was saying before, to have all of the credentials, all the data for, data center licensing use cases. And the more that you can actually show stakeholders and sponsors early on, the more interested they become in a project. And I think I speak of projects holistically here, that if nothing's been delivered in the first month or two, people start losing interest, the project stalls, representatives of the project start moving on to other things, and then it becomes difficult to maintain momentum. So MVPs are all around stakeholder interest, project momentum, and return on investment, because typically you can actually show return on investment very early on, with the SaaS use cases. So big proponents of MVPs for that reason.
Yeah,
agree with that.
That's
Yeah.
something that I always advise the customers as well. That is to start small and then big build on top of it. Um, Mickey, I would like to know from you what are some of the um, drawbacks of a big bang approach as opposed to an MVP approach with special focus on ham implementations.
Yeah. So I think um, coming back to the previous experience was having MVP is good to contain the solution. So in a way, if we have an intention, we want to do A, B, C, D, E, for example, it's easier to contain them with an MVP rather than big bang approach because when you have a big bang approach, especially for organizations that haven't really got an internal HAM or ITAM team to support the process moving forward, everything is all over the place from what we can see. So when we started with HAM implementation in service now, what we've seen is if we want to do a big bang approach, say for example, we want to do connecting procurement, we want to put a request management in, we want to put integration to HR, we want to also do
Yeah.
discovery at the same time, everything is just going to crumble because you wouldn't know which problem to fix once things started to showing, broken or something like that. So coming back to the MVP idea is the idea is to start something small. We'll trial and test what we know works, and we can then adjust the process accordingly. We can then also guide the internal process team to follow. Yes, this is what we implemented, and this is what we would like you to do as part of the out of the box implementation in ServiceNow, for example. Here are the documents that you can look at, and then get them run with it, come back in maybe 3 or 6 months. Let's do a size for the second phase, for example. And with doing big bang, we just don't know which point that can break at the same time. For example, one of the implementation that we just recently did, we had to do integration with one of the big vendor to their procurement system. At the same time, we also have to build the request management system for them, right? And also look at the legacy solution, which is for us maybe a little bit challenging to do it in such short time. And
So,
If I can just pick up on the procurement bit, and Kritika mentioned it before,
mm,
that this integration with procurement, whether it's a process or a data integration, is actually really, really important. And that,
Yeah.
so one thing in actually loading all your assets as such, but we need sort of like processes to understand when new assets, both software licenses and hardware assets, are ordered, because we have discovery systems, but what happens if, every quarter an organization or bulk orders a load of assets? You've got like 500, in stock, they're not operational, they're not being used. So how do you keep track of all of that? Yeah. And what Mickey was alluding to there was, integrations with procurement systems or vendor systems so that we actually know about those devices at the point of receipt, not when they're actually first in the environment and sync with an inventory system. Yeah. And the same
yeah,
what Critical was talking about software licenses. Yeah, it's great that we get the customer entitlements at the start of a project, but what happens at when the point of the Microsoft annual renewal, that someone needs to tell us what those numbers are, and having a good process that actually allows that information to be easily ingested into SAM, really important. And that we can't be in situations where we're chasing people around. It all needs to be sort of like all integrated and structured. So Mickey makes a great point about those procurement and vendor integration. So we are actually tracking assets hopefully before they're even received. We know they're being ordered, right? Yeah. So when they're actually delivered, it's no surprise. So really important points, Mickey.
thanks, Mike.
So, also, Mike, as you mentioned that we can start with two strategic publishers when we are doing MVP model. So, it also helps in proving the ROI early in stages. So one of the practice services that we provide at Asset Sense is your M365 POV, wherein we do the analysis of all the Microsoft products and we can show the ROI, I mean, what they have bought and what they are actually using it. So with MVP, we can start with that. Then slowly, when we have got the confidence and we know the environment better of the organization, we can slowly move and deliver the value quickly and iteratively in MVP model. So MVP is something that you learn and adapt as you go in the implementations, because I think every publishers, my knowledge is not limited to Microsoft. I have hands-on experience on different publishers as well. So I've seen that different publishers, they behave differently in different environments. So your user metric, your licenses might be different for all the organizations and even the departments. So with MVP, you get an idea in the initial stage how these are licensing being used, where the implementation is. So MVP is basically you get fewer surprises when you start an engagement. And on the other side, I think Big Bang, it sounds exciting, but there are implementation partners where they go with the Big Bang implementations. They would want to start everything at once, cover all the publishers they know about, their workflows, your integrations. But in reality, I think it usually leads to delays, and your scope is not limited. It will just creep around. The scope, it will keep get extending, and it gets sometimes overwhelming. So definitely MVP. So in short, I can say everyone at Asset Sense favors MVP, right?
Favorable. Yes.
Well, the other thing as well, just to follow up on those points, Kritika, is I often get involved in conversations around the licenses that have been bought, and then there's limited sort of budget to do a full implementation. So the benefit of an MVP is that, and this actually happened this week, and that we switched on an M365 integration, compared it with entitlements, and also like usage, whether or not licenses were assigned to inactive users. And, within sort of like an hour, we'd already identified like annual savings of $100,000. Yeah. And that either contributes to the ROI on the license purchase, or it also then funds future phases of the project. So, that's the other benefit of MVP, that you can get early return on investment, time to value, and then you can then fund future phases of the project. So, lots and lots of reasons for MVP. So I think we're all agreed that starting small, MVPs, SaaS use cases, particularly M365 and Adobe, which Kritika mentions, we have specific expertise to be able to identify easily claimable savings. Definitely the way forward. And from Mickey's point, from a ham point of view, we get more and more involved now with ham implementations that, shall we call them, global in nature. They transcend more than sort of like one country, and a big bang approach never works there. Because from a hardware perspective, irrespective of what manufacturers may tell you, the models are different across different countries. Pricing's different. Cultures are different. So in that situation, doing a big bang with multiple countries involved is always going to be difficult, because it's not like you're managing sort of one set of stakeholders in one country. They're dotted all around sort of like Asia, maybe even sort of like more global than that. And, the best approach there is to do things region by region, country by country, bed in a process, bed in a capability, learn from that, and then when you do future rollouts, then you've got all of that expertise and knowledge and learning all baked in to sort of like your future phases. So that's what I think, Mickey, is one of the most valuable things to think about with larger scale ham deployments.
Agree.
Great answers, everyone. This
But
brings me to, sorry, Kritika.
So we didn't ask Suman's take on this. Versus question, what Suman takes, since Suman takes care of all the engagements at Asset Sense. Suman, what's your
Yeah.
approach?
Yeah, of course. MVP is my preferred and favored approach as well, and for reasons that all of you have already mentioned and talked about. I think doing small, showing to the business the value in doing the SAM or the HAM implementation, and building on it thereafter, after you've demonstrated the capability and the value to the business, is much easier than the business coming to you and asking you 3 months down the line, where are we and what are we doing and what is the path forward. That's a much easier conversation to have with the business once you have demonstrated something. And for that reason, MVP is your answer to those questions. Now, this brings me to my next question, and I believe most of our potential customers would be very interested in this question, and that is to give them an estimate of how long would it take to build an ITAM practice from scratch, or from a point of view of a customer who is doing bits and pieces of IT asset management. So, Mike, I'll come to you for this question. I know it's not a straightforward answer, and hence I would want your take on this.
Inside.
It's actually a great question, Suman. It really is, because what we tend to find with a lot of implementations, that you mobilize a team, a project team from a customer perspective. And what happens more than often than not is that they field someone who is their software asset management lead or process owner. And the problem we have with that is that usually they're BAU folks, right? And they're busy keeping the lights on. They're trying to get involved in the SAM project. So if we are looking to reimagine the way in which customers do software asset management, I'd say the first point is to find a champion from a software asset management perspective who's not really sort of overly involved with day-to-day activities, who can actually then drive those changes within the SAM team. Typically, we find that the SAM BAU people, they need to do a lot of training. They need to sort of like work out how to use new tooling, how to adopt new processes, all that type of thing. And that takes time, and it sort of like takes effort to sort of like understand what the SAM strategy is looking at, while sort of trying to keep the lights on. So I would say that to build up a good SAM capability, you actually need a leader, a sponsor, a champion who can sort of like make that happen within an existing organization. And it's just really important. I could talk for a long time on this, Suman, but having that sort of like person, driving the changes within an organization, not me outside of the organization trying to drive it, which is always going to be sort of like difficult. You actually need that internal champion who's actually going to make sure that the SAM program is a success. And I think that's the way in which you actually start things.
Yep. And I'd like to add to that point, Zuman and Mike and Kritika. Also, what I've seen in the past is some organizations think that one person can do everything: ham, SAM, ITAM, running the process, doing procurement and everything else. I've seen that happen before. So coming back to the original question about the challenges of organization facing was the intent, right? Sometimes they want to do the intention. Yes, we want to do this program of work, but neglecting the support system that they need to build around it. And sometimes they don't take into account for the costing of that moving forward. So I guess coming to your question about the time and effort required to set up the ITAM practices, it depends on the budget of organizations, right? That's one. And second to that is also depending on how soon they want to reach a stage whereby they're mature enough to see, yep, we want to be here, at this point, we want to be on this stage at this point. and that we also need to take into the process or the design of the item, because without having a roadmap, a clear roadmap, where they want to be at certain time, is challenging. And I this setting up of item team, we can put it into the roadmap, and I say, yep, by this time you will have 2 people running this operation. By this time you have 4 people, and then it's easier for CTO, CIO to come up with the funding if we have a clear roadmap. That's probably what I want to add. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Mickey.
No worries.
Kritika, what do you think when you're setting up an ITAM practice? Do you think, is there a particular order to follow there? For example, you do ham first and then you do SAM, or you do SAM first and then do ham? Do you think, is there any such preference?
No, I think, Suman, it totally depends how the customer wants. ITAM is something, it's more than just deploying a tool. It's basically you're
Yep.
building the governance framework for both ham and SAM. So once we initially roll out the engagements, it's for just SAM maybe, we can expand to more publishers. We can slowly and gradually mature the process, be it for SAM and ham. And from compliance, you move to optimization. So I can't say that there is a definite time for any SAM implementation. You cannot say it's 4 to 6 months or maybe an year. So it will be just like an ongoing practice.
Mhm.
Some customers, they might not take it seriously, but it's a fact. It's not something
Yep.
that you start implementing SAM tool or start doing the engagement before you hear the word vendor audit. So to avoid that situation, it should be ideally, it's an ongoing, it should be an ongoing practice.
Yep.
For me, the real time that goes into data cleanup, the data is really messed up sometimes. So I put a lot of efforts, be it your CMDB readiness, your data cleanup, and normalization is one of those. So yeah, no definite time for any ITAM implementations. It's just ongoing. Please remember that.
Yep. Item is a moving process. It's
Yeah.
never set and forget. Yep.
Right. Now, one of the issues, one of the challenges that many of our customers face and have raised in the past is the tool implementation is the easy bit. Um,
Mm,
the difficult part is operationalizing the whole process and the
Mhm.
structure around uh, ham and sam. So what do you think we can do uh, to help customers with these issues and challenges? Starting with you first, Mike.
It's actually, yeah, I mean, it's another great question. And we see this happening all too often that, you work on an implementation, consultancy project, maybe part of that implementation is an MVP. And then, we develop some workflows, new forms, that type of thing. They're tested, put into production, go live, 2 weeks hypercare, and then that's it. And, the problem is sometimes is that, you know, organizations don't actually have, perhaps the knowledgeable people to actually like maintain the momentum. They don't really sort of like fully understand the tool inside out. Um, don't understand enough about like CMDBs and sort of like how data is ingested into CMDBs, the relationships between assets, and then it just becomes easier to go back to spreadsheets. So that's where we actually would sort of like recommend, and this is what Asset Sense do quite a lot. Yeah, we either sort of like do a managed service, which does absolutely everything, primarily sort of tracking license compliance, but also as well, like, we call it staff augmentation. Yeah, that we just like have an arrangement with an organization, maybe 100 hours, and they sort of like, call upon those hours as and when they actually need help. And what that actually does, it makes sure that they maintain their return on investment, make sure that they get value, and also as well within, say, the context of that 100 hours, they're getting a lot of knowledge transfer, and just sort of like, day-to-day tips as to how they can use the tool better, how they can sort of like get the right business outcomes. So maintaining that momentum post go live is sometimes quite challenging, and there are ways in which we can help customers with that. And certainly, I think the staff augmentation option becomes quite favourable for organisations to know that there's someone there to hold their hand. And if they want to transform that into something bigger, like a managed service, then again, that's something that can be discussed, and can also take out some of the issues or the knowledge gaps that customers may have with some of the more complex license use cases. And the one that comes to mind where we have specific expertise is with IBM, and we find that lots of customers need help and managed services around ILMT, who are a very litigious organisation, and sometimes the bills that they want to put out for non-compliance, they're not sort of $100, $1,000. They're usually like 10, 20 million. Yeah. So those are sort of like the things organisations may need help with. And so depends really, to cut a long story short, depends on maturity, knowledge within the SAM team as to how they actually continue to derive value from their investments and deliver business outcomes out of a SAM organisation, such as savings, compliance, audit defence, all those sorts of things.
Yep, that's a great point you make there, Mike. So if our customers they don't have that sort of capability in-house, they can always count on us to support them through our managed services offering
Yes.
to help them operationalize their ITAM processes. Mickey and Kritika, would you like to add anything?
I guess Mike is sort of cover everything around that. So I think it'll be dependent on what, coming back to the intention again from my side, the intent of the customer. What do they want out of this program? And then we can always work accordingly. And that's probably my take on that.
Just without getting overwhelmed.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, a common thing that we have seen across the implementation projects is people complaining of burnouts and a lot of stress just trying to get things into place. So the message from us is we are here to help on your ITAM journey. So whether you are an established ITAM practice and just need help with bits and pieces, or whether you are a rank new organization to IT asset management and you need to set up a practice, you need to implement the tools, operationalize the processes and stuff, do reach out to us. We are industry experts with a collective experience of more than a decade in IT asset management, and we are your one-stop shop for all your ITAM needs. And on that note, I would like to end this podcast here. Thanks, Mike, Kritika, and Mickey for joining and sharing your valuable insights, and hope our customers will take away a lot of information and nuggets of good practice that we have talked about in this session.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, if there's any topics that we've raised today that people who've taken time to listen to this podcast want to talk about, then more than happy to accommodate a discussion to talk about like pain points, how we can help you. As Suman said, I've got a decade's worth of experience on the ServiceNow platform. I've been deploying the SAM Pro product since it was launched in 2017, which reminds me just how quickly time is passing. And I've been an ITAM, and to show how old I am, which I've actually been an ITAM practitioner for like 25 years now. So started off doing hardware, recent years more focused on software. So there's a lot of experience that I've gleaned over the years. So feel free to reach out for a discussion. Thank you.
Just to add to that, if anyone have any questions, you can reach us contact us at assetsense.com.au. We'll put the details on the podcast on the description of this podcast.
And we hope to see you soon, all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.